So let's set up the third person part of our game. So, well, for right now, it's going to be fairly simple. We're just going to go on to our item manager asset. Well, technically these are going to be characters, so they're not really going to be items, but the logic is almost identical. So, I'm going to create a new class. Yeah, I forgot to change the name, damn it. Anyway, let's delete all of this. We're going to call this character, and this is going to be a scriptable object. Then in here, let's change the name, because we forgot to change it, to character. Okay, so a character will of course have a prefab. Okay, we can have other things over here, but right now we only just need this. Then on my item manager, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do all characters. Then we're going to be searching for character and character. Okay, then we're going to have a dictionary that is going to be doing this, and we're going to be using an ID for getting dictionary. Okay, and we also need, of course we don't really need instance characters because we're just using the models for the most part. So what we're going to need is a way to just get the character. Okay, then to get the character we need from the character dictionary try and get value ID out character result, return the result. Then inside the init we're going to get now a new array of objects that is going to be inside folder characters, inside a type of character. I'm just going to use the same array as before. Then for each object if it is a character, we're going to add it inside our character, inside our all characters. Then for each character inside our inside our all characters, we're going to add it as a character on our character dictionary. Okay, so now we have a list of all our characters. We are going to do a few more things with this later, but for right now we only need this. Let's go under our character, and we need to make this as a create asset menu. Then inside a resources folder, let this compile first. Okay, resources, let's create a new folder which is called characters. Then we're going to create a new character. Let's call this character 1. Okay, then we just need to assign a prefab. I'm just going to drag and drop. Let's unpack this, drop it here, and I'm going to pack this in here. Okay, and yeah, I think that's fine. We can delete the first one. I think we deleted the other guy. Let's move him there. Okay, and just for good measure, I'm going to create a second character, and I don't know, let's pick one at random, whatever this is. Okay, technically this can just be inside another prefab, whatever. We don't really need to have this inside the resource folder. Okay, let's see and let's think. Yeah, now, so when we instantiate a controller, we're not only going to be passing the weapon ID, we're also going to be passing the character ID as well, which means There is a bit of an overlap between TPS objects and FPS objects, keep that in mind. So over here, let's pass character 1, let's hard code it for now, because this is going to be instanced through the network. So let's do it like that. Load weapon, base item, okay, that should be the same position. Okay, so let's see, we have some, yeah, we don't have it yet. Let's add it. We need a transform or the game object for FPS object and TPS object. Now, obviously, if you are local or not, it's going to change a few things. For example, it's going to change if you are not local, you're going to be using a different parent than the weapon parent we have over here. You're actually going to be using the right hand transform. Okay, so let's see one thing. Is local else. Okay, so let's create the TPS object as well. We want to have access to the animator of the TPS. Okay, so let's see. Over here we need to create the TPS object. Well, the TPS animator, we're getting the animator and all those things. Well, okay, in both cases we're actually going to need the controller, so let's maybe encapsulate this. Public void load character, and that will be a character ID. Okay, I'm going to copy a few things from here, well, all of them, but we do not yet need, we just need the character, and I'm going to be getting it with get character and the character ID, then character prefab or character instance or character objects or just game object, instantiate character dot prefab. Okay, then if it's local, then go.transform.parent is going to be your FPS object .transform, and if it's not, then we're going to be parented under the TPS object. Okay, then this needs to change to game object. We don't want this, we don't want this either. Okay, so just like that, we just created a character. Let's see though, before you load the character ID, before you load your weapon, load the character ID. Then in both cases we're going to have the TPS animator from the game object dot get component in children animator. Okay, then if this is not the local object, then weapon object will say TPS animator get bone transform right hand. Okay, so local position, okay, so that should, well, I hope that should do it. We're actually going to have to split it up. We're going to have to make a new way to add this, so they are kind of similar with what we are doing with the FPS objects. Okay, but for right now, let's just try this. It will just instance the guns in whatever place, it doesn't really matter. So we have our FPS object. We're just going to create an empty game object, which we're going to call TPS objects, and on controller, let's do TPS objects. I actually think that we should be creating both of these instances. However, we'll see this in a bit. So I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm just going to tick to untick is local, and I'm going to click to close the FPS object, and let's just place it anywhere in the scene. Let's hit play. We'll see what's going to happen. Yeah, and as you can see, we basically just instantiate the character. This is the wrong weapon. Well, it's the correct weapon. We just parented. The pivot needs to be adjusted for TPS rather than FPS. Okay, we're getting there. Let's change it and let's try the character 2 instead of character 1, just to see that we get a different object. Okay, we do get a different object, much more groovy as well. Okay, so let's rethink a little bit of our logic. Both of them are going to be creating the FPS and the TPS part of the object. So in my case, because we're going to be using the same skeletons both for FPS and for TPS, I think we could just do this. We can just instantiate this twice. Then we're going to have TPS animator and an FPS animator. Okay, no problem. Then let's split this up, and we're going to make an FPS animator. So right now, let's encapsulate this into bool is, or let's just say referenced animator, and no, that's wrong. So in both cases we want two instances of this object. Okay, we want this to be under parent. Okay, then okay, so we're going to be passing the parent. I think that's only the difference between them. The only difference between them is the parent. Yeah, that's the only difference I can see. The current weapon hook. Okay, one thing though, we need to know if it's TPS or not, because we don't want to override the current weapon, and we don't also want to override the weapon actual transform. We only want to do this in the FPS part. So we're going to do this twice, and the first one will be for the FPS part, so it's not FPS, and the second one will be for the TPS part, and this one now will be a TPS animator, get object or get bone transform, human body bones, right hand. Okay, and it's TPS. Okay, so when we're loading the character, we want to know if bool is TPS. So we're going to be using this twice. We're going to be saying false and true. Then independent or if it's local or not, we just need to know if it's TPS or FPS. Okay, and it's going to change also down here. So if is third person shooter, that else FPS animator equals go get component children animator. Okay, then we have false. Okay. So down here, if is the local enemy, or well, if it's the local controller, which it is, we're going to set it active, and we're also going to close the TPS object. We're going to close it. Set active, set it to false. Else, we can set this to true. Okay, close that. Okay, so let's go into scene view and see what's happening. So this is the FPS guy of ours. Okay, you can see it's the FPS, and we also have a TPS version. Now there's not much of a difference, okay, because we are still using the same model. We don't use any animations and stuff like that, but it will show when we do later, when we have other things. So here's the FPS objects, and here's the TPS objects. Now, why am I doing this? Why am I creating two instances of the same character, and so on and so on? Normally, well, I want to do replays as well, so the last kill will get a replay, or when you kill somebody you get a replay, but that's something we're going to worry about later. Now, normally, inside the controller, where we are instantiating the parent, the same way we're doing here. So for example, we have the prefab, we can do the TPS prefab and FPS prefab. For right now, since we only have one, I'm simply going to say return me the prefab. But if you're going to use different objects, just delete this part, and just delete this part and just assign the TPS or the FPS prefab, no matter, depending what you're using. It doesn't really matter in this case. So in that case, if that was the case, then that will be is TPS character dot TPS prefab. Okay, if you were using different models, I don't, so that's what I'm going to use. The same goes with the FPS, with the weapons as well. But let's fix the parenting of the weapons. First of all, I'm going to create a, let's call it TPS parent hook, or weapon hook, weapon parent. Let's open that up. We don't need any of this. We just need this to be an empty game object. So, because we kinda want to use the same objects and the same pivots, we don't want to be resetting that all the time. Let's go under our prefab for this character, and we're going to assign the TPS weapon parent right onto his right hand. TPS weapon parent. Okay, so there it is. Let's assign one of the items right underneath it. Now, the trick with this is I'm actually going to move the I'm actually going to create an empty game object, and I'm going to say TPS weapon parent, and I'm going to parent this over here. We want to remove this, we want to keep this, so TPS weapon parent, and now I'm actually going to move this game object and place the weapon where I feel it should look correct with the hand. Now I'm not going to go really crazy with the details. onto this. It's not that's not really the actual point for that. Okay, but let's say that this is good enough. Of course, we can use different pivots if you want per weapon. We'll see. And I'm going to delete the weapon. But now I have the correct position for this. Well, somewhat the correct position for this. So let's close all of that. Then now we know when we are going to create the weapon on this guy, on the controller. So load weapon. Instead of passing the transform for the right hand, I'm going to say TPS animator get component children get component children TPS weapon parent. Okay, now the transform. That's how it looks. Now let's encapsulate this, because this we might be using it a lot throughout the level. So void load weapon all string weapon ID, and that will let us use all of that. Load weapon ID. Okay, because between rounds we are going to be changing weapons, we just want to use this. So let's test this out, and I think we should be complete with this. And now the real only difference is when we are instancing now the controllers from the multiplayer, of course. It just means we're going to let it compile. Takes some time. So yeah, when we are instancing the controllers now, we are going to be we're going to be changing the IDs based on what the server says. Okay, that's the main idea. That's why we're using IDs and so on, because we cannot really rely on anything else. So we are synced throughout the okay, almost there. Okay, so this guy didn't actually use his weapon. Let's say this is the TPS object. Oh, that's the FPS object. That's the TPS object. What's weird is we didn't got an error, so who knows what this is. But we're not seeing anything over here. Where is this? This is correct. TPS weapon parent weapon pivot. That's kind of off though. So hold on. Let's see, weapon parent, load weapon parent. Should not load weapon. And then we have current weapon prefab, create item instance, and the parent. That's weird, but this is not the same guy as us. I'm a little bit confused as well. Let's close this and let's fix the after we instance it on our own TPS object. Let's see where we have to place it. So TPS object, parent that. Ah, that's weird. This guy is underneath. Oh yeah, we're using the wrong. It's parented underneath the FPS object. rather than the TPS object. Okay, so when we're loading the character, I think we're doing something wrong over here. Is TPS animator. Is TPS animator from the TPS animator though? Well, let's move this below. So if your TPS object, paste it over here. If your TPS over here, then do this. Okay, put it there. Oops, put this there. So we have assigned the FPS animator. Okay, then when loading a weapon from the TPS animator, we should be correct. We have the get component in children TPS weapon parent. On the FPS animator, we can actually say we can try and destroy this, but I don't know that's the correct solution because we should really be getting the FPS part. And yeah, we don't. Perfect. So I'm going to close my FPS object. Of course, it's going to complain a little bit, but I'm going to open the TPS object, and there we go. But I think when I fix this position for the TPS object, I forgot to set the pivot of this to 0, 0, 0. So for this, we should fix it again. Say it's something like this. And I'm going to copy the component. And let's go under character prefab, open that up. And let's go and find it. Yeah, if you're thinking if you can use this for changing between FPS and TPS, you totally can, but that's not what I'm going for. Okay, so if any problems come up from that, then well, that's kind of your problem, isn't it? So there we go. Okay, and I'm going to enable the second controller as well, just so that we can see we have something. I'm also going to change the proportions for these guys because I hate the big heads. It's really kind of pointless. And another thing is, you can see that the model we're using is now rendered on the wrong layer, so it's rendered on top of everything. So we're going to have to fix that with this. So load weapon. First of all, let's check the layer. The layer is the FPS part and default. Okay, so whenever we're creating a weapon that is TPS, we have the object. We need to find each object that comes from this weapon. So let's find all our transforms. Childs, and that will be from weapon object dot get components in children transform. And well, technically we can just do for each transform t in childs t dot game object dot layer equals is TPS, then its layer the 0 or 10. I think it's 10, but it might be the 8 layer. Let's see. Yeah, it's the 8 layer. Okay, save that, and let's minimize and let's hit play. Okay, and you can see we now have on the correct layer the weapons. So perfect. Now, well, I'm actually pretty much ready to add multiplayer onto this, to be honest. Like, we pretty much need the basics of what we need is there. We have instance IDs for weapons and for characters, so that's all we need to. So maybe we'll do a little bit more detection and then we'll see. So anyway, as always, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and if you like to see more stuff, more videos, more series, more of everything, then consider supporting my Patreon so we can keep making all of these nice things we're making. I'll see you on the next one.